I'm ready to start finishing now, and I'm going to be using an oil varnish blend for most of the project. So that's a 3-part finish. It has oil, which is either linseed oil or tung oil, polyurethane or varnish. I'm using polyurethane. Varnish is a little harder to find. You definitely want an oil-based polyurethane. Gloss, ideally, it's going to be a semi-gloss or matte finish anyway because we're going to wipe most of it off. So we want a gloss polyurethane or varnish. And the third part is mineral spirits or paint thinner. Now, paint thinner now has changed a bit because of the VOC rules, and it's hard to find, real paint thinner. What you want to avoid is something that says contains paint thinner, contains mineral spirits. So if you can't find true mineral spirits, then turpentine works just fine. It's a little more expensive, a little more smelly, shall we say. But because it's a natural product, it doesn't have the VOC concerns that paint thinner does, which is a petroleum product. So I would mix those together, 1 part of each. And I've got a can here that I've mixed up a while ago. So I'll use that for most of the project, but inside the drawer, I don't want to put an oil finish because the oil takes a really long time to dry, and there's always going to be a little bit of a smell associated with it if it's in an enclosed area. So for basically from the drawer front, this of course is going to get oil. From here back, basically everything back here and the inside of the drawer front, I'm going to use shellac. And of course, same for the drawer bottom. So I've taken these apart. So I've got some amber shellac here. It's Bullseye. You can get this pretty much anywhere. It says traditional finish and sealer. So they also make I guess it's called a primer. This is a little different. This has a little bit of wax in it, which is fine for what I'm going to do with it. It also has a little bit of a color to it, the amber, which is fine too, because the oil varnish blend that I'm going to put on here is a similar color. So I've mixed this up just to make sure it's all ready to go. I'm just going to use a brush. And, this is nothing special for a brush. And I'm going to start, near the front. I can kind of sneak up there. And just I'm only going to put 1 coat on here. I just want to get it on and then wipe off any excess. So I'll continue to do that and trying to avoid getting any on the front of the front. So I basically want it everywhere else. If I could just dip this in a big can, that'd be great. But obviously I can't do that. Okay, the whole thing is coated now. I'm going to take just a clean rag and wipe off any excess. I finished with the shellac. Now it turns out mine was a little bit old, so I had to go over it with some denatured alcohol to flatten it out. It kind of built up a little bit. Normally it just sinks right in. It's easy to wipe off. So I've got my oil varnish blend here, and I'll do the drawer first. And like I said, I'm only doing the front of the drawer. So I'm going to brush this on, and I'll let it sit for a little while. Now this actually has been sitting around a little bit too, so it's kind of thick, I can see. But I'll do the front of the front and this top edge, and then maybe just the end grain here a little bit. Doesn't matter if I overlap that a little bit. And then I'll let this sit for a bit until it starts to get a little bit tacky, and then I'll wipe it off. typically use two rags. One ends up being kind of dirty and full of finish after a little while, and then I'll wipe it off with a clean rag. So there's the front, and I'll work on the top next, and of course then I'll do the rest of the table. And I might put one coat on the interior of this, one coat on these inside areas here, but then the outside will get 3 or maybe 4 coats. We'll see how it builds. So I'll continue working on the top, and we'll wipe it off in a little bit. So I'm almost done getting the finish on the table here. Now I did not put finish inside where the drawer goes. I did the bottoms of these supports, but I'm just going to avoid where the drawer parts slide against each other. No reason to put finish there. In fact, I'll probably put a little bit of wax there to make the drawer work well. But of course I'm going to put it everywhere else. All right, the finish has been on there a little while now, and I'm going to wipe it off. So I want to get every bit of it off the surface, right? It's going to stay in the pores of the wood, but I want to wipe off all of it. And what I'll do is I'll get the top surface of the top here, just get the big stuff off. Yeah, that looks great. And turn it over. Of course, that's leaving marks on the top, but I'll finish when I'm done here. I'll turn it back over and leave it with the top side up. In fact, I have some boards that I used for this that have some nails in them. So I just have a couple of pieces. I used a nail gun to put some 1.25 inch nails through here. So I'll set these on a bench and put this right side up, so just the tips of the nails are touching the underside of the top, and that'll let it dry without any marks on it. So continue to do this, and like I said, I want to get most of the finish off with this rag. This is getting fairly dirty, and then I'll finish with a clean rag. At some point this will get so wet it won't be worth using anymore. This will then become my primary rag, and I'll get a new clean one for the final wipe there. Now, as you're doing this, I can see reflection here, and every time I touch this, I'm leaving fingerprints. But it's the underside, so I'm not too concerned about that. But I do like to ideally not have that. So certainly not on the top of the top, I should say. So what I can do is take a couple of clean rags here to turn this over. And I'm going to hold it with a rag. You really want to make sure you don't leave any shiny spots where the finish is a little bit thicker, because those are going to be bare to get off later. You typically have to resand to get rid of those. That looks good. So clean rags, put that there, and just a last wipe to make sure everything's good. In fact, let me do the edges one more time. There we go. And then okay, on to the rest of the parts here. So wiping off all the finish here. Getting in all the corners. Okay, so there's my dirty rag. Now I'll finish with the clean rag. So as I'm doing the final wiping here, you really want to make sure you get into these corners. It's easy to leave extra finish in there. And you know, as you're wiping, you can tell when there's a little extra finish because the rag kind of drags a little bit. All right, so that needs to sit for at least 24 hours before I put on the next coat. So everything's going to sit for a little while. Before I finish up, this particularly this rag that's fairly wet, I need to be very careful with this. If I just wad this up, throw it in a corner, it's possible the drying process of the oil can generate enough heat to catch on fire. So that's spontaneous combustion. So what I'll typically do is I will drape this over something, maybe a trash can or something, so that it's not wadded up at all. If it's all spread out, it's not going to be a problem. I'll let that dry out, and it gets a little crunchy. And then just to be on the safe side, I won't, even once it's dry, I won't throw it away. I'll wait until trash day, and I'll throw it out that morning. So if by some very bizarre chance it did catch on fire, it's going to be in my trash can sitting out in the street. So you really want to be careful with the stuff that it doesn't catch on fire. So I'll do that and come back, and I'll basically repeat the process I just did, usually 2 more times for everything from here down and the top of the top and the edges of the top. I will do maybe another coat or 2 after that, and that's usually enough to give me a nice finish and sheen. One last thing I should point out, if you have an open grain wood like oak, what happens is the finish wicks down into those large pores, and as it dries, it tends to wick back out of the pores, and you'll get little looks like droplets or donut-shaped bits of finish in various spots on your project, particularly if it's warmer. So what you need to do in a case like that, if you have wood like that, and with any wood I'd still come back and look, and that is 10, 15 minutes later, maybe an hour or 2 later, depending on how things are going, go back and see if any of that finish is wicking out of the pores. And you definitely want to wipe that off, because if you just walk away and leave it for the day, when you come back the next day, those little drops of finish are a pain to get off. So definitely try to make sure those are gone. And you'll notice over time they eventually quit happening, but definitely keep an eye out for those.